Welcome to the Hello Flow podcast, a space where we bridge together professional success and career alignment with personal well-being. I'm your host, Casey Cunliffe. Join me in conversations around driving your career while also being mindful of your overall well-being. At a time when many people are awakening to their soul's purpose and navigating that messy but magical middle, I offer this space for personal and professional growth and alignment, and a place to ground and support you in your daily grind. After tuning into this podcast, I hope you receive the empowering counsel and actionable tools to usher in more ease and flow in your life, and equip you as you discover, develop, and evolve your Dharma. Now on to the episode. This week's episode features Sammie Bergan, owner of BookHouse Hawai'i, a mini thrifted bookshop that hosts fun, bookish events. Sam's love of reading started at a young age, and her mission today is to bring book lovers together, share great books, and get more people excited about reading. As a bookworm and book lover myself, I could not wait to have and share this conversation with a fellow book nerd. We talk about everything from what inspired our reading habits, our favorite books and authors, and book recommendations for 2024. The second half of the conversation focuses on a casual book review of the worldwide bookseller Atomic Habits by James Clear. So whether you are a fellow book lover or someone who is wanting to get into reading books, tune in because you're in for a super fun episode. Welcome to the Hello Flow pod, Sammie. So glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited.
I'm really excited to hear about your story. You are a thrift bookstore owner, and I'd love to hear about what brought you to being a bookstore owner and building a business around books, and what drives you to have that as your main business idea.
It all started by being around people like yourself, entrepreneurs. And so that's how the business side of things started. I've loved books since I was really young. And then when I realized that it can turn into a business and that I'm capable, because all these entrepreneurial women were like, of course you're capable, of course you can do it. Then I was like, okay, I guess I can do it. So I was, gifted the opportunity to open BookHouse inside of Gather, so that it was a lot more easy of a path for me to go down and start something up, even if it was really small. But the whole goal of BookHouse is to bring book lovers together and get more people excited about reading. And it's just nice because I get to curate all of the books that I get to sell and get excited about my inventory and talk to people about books all the time. So that was, the motivation behind starting it, but I've always loved books. So
I would love to continue on the story behind what got you to start reading and why you love reading. And what are, some of your favorite books that you've read?
Yes, I've been reading since I was really young because my mom likes to read. I believe my dad likes to read. Maybe he doesn't read so much anymore, but my mom really kind of sparked that in me. And when I was young, she would buy me books as presents, as gifts all the time. So they were like a treat for me. And that was the energy around books and the idea of books and reading. In middle school, I was a heavy reader because it was like escapism, right? And I think even now for a lot of people, books can be a form of escapism.
Yeah.
And it still is for me, depending on the type of book. But I grew up just reading and loving being immersed in these different worlds. And then I continued on into my adult age, being obsessed. And over the past few years, I really dived in, especially with the online community and meeting people who love books. And yeah, so.
When you say escapism, can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah.
Obviously in my head, I'm thinking fiction books. So growing up, starting in middle school and high school, what kind of books did you read? And how did that help you, I guess, escape?
Yeah, I read probably a lot of dystopian and then also fantasy books. And to this day, those are the easiest ones to kind of escape into that world because it's a completely different world, something that, isn't real. But yeah, if you want like something new, if you want to escape whatever your current reality is, or if you're having a great life, but you just want to test out another world, and then you get to get transported into this other world because the writing just takes you there. Same thing if you get really delved into a movie, like everyone wants to be in the Harry Potter movie kind of thing. And so the energy is there, and fantasy is really easy again because you can just feel like you're with dragons or magical elements or these gorgeous buildings and things that don't exist necessarily in this world. So you can escape to something new.
Yeah, and I feel like when I started getting, well, not when I first started reading, but I read the Hunger Games trilogy. And I remember just, I think I finished that entire trilogy in a week just because I escaped into that world and how descriptive the writing was and how you can really develop a character in a book. And then I saw the movies afterwards, and it's always the book that's better than the movie because of how descriptive it is and how it can take you to a different world. So I love that. I love how for you is a way to kind of escape to another world. How do you think reading helps just people in general in terms of their own personal development or even professional development? Why reading versus other mediums of obtaining knowledge or reading or, stories like going to the movies?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think on the professional and personal development side specifically, because I do delve into a lot of nonfiction in my spare time, right? So it's like enjoyment as well, as opposed to like mandatory reading, which we used to have to do. It's very comforting and an easy way for you to obtain new knowledge, as you said, and to learn new things from people that you trust based on the author and their like level of credibility, or if a large group of other people are enjoying and recommending a specific book, then you can kind of have that inherent trust when you're reading it. And I think the way that it's laid out is very, again, accessible. You can just flip back a page and like underline stuff and really make the book your own, as opposed to maybe like videos and stuff. They're not as like savable and you can't personalize them as much. Whereas you can with a book. If there's something, for example, this book, like if there's something you really want to remember, you can just tab it, you can underline it because the book is here in your hands and it's yours. So and that way you'll always have that knowledge to refer back to. Yeah,
I personally love having the physical book versus like a Kindle, which I know is a popular thing now, or even audiobooks, because you can go back and highlight or tab and then be able to go back easily. And also just setting up your own bookshelves around the place too. So if someone goes into your bookstore, which is called BookHouse, and they are asking you for a suggestion, how do you normally help someone?
The first question I tend to ask people is like, what kind of books do you like to read? Because all of my books are organized based off of the genre. So for example, if someone was looking for a self-help type of book or a self-development, it's a specific space on my shelf and I'll point it out to them and maybe give them a few recommendations based off of whatever's in stock. Because it's thrifted, I'll always have different books and I'll only have one typically. So I like heavily curate. I can pick this like one book out for them based off of whatever they say their interest is. And then talk about the book or talk about other books they've liked. But does that answer the question? Okay.
I feel like when I'm thinking about, I guess for me nowadays, I tend to listen to a lot of podcasts. So if there's an author that goes on a podcast and I like their message, I like their style, I like the topic, then I'll add it to my cart, my Amazon cart, or at like local bookstores, just trying to like go and see, is the book there that I can actually purchase and buy, because I respect authors and like the time it took for them to write and publish that book, write, edit, publish that book. So it's also supporting, a small business as well. A couple of small businesses. So who would you say are your favorite authors?
For the side of like self-help or self-development, Stephen Covey, Brianna Wiest, and Mark Manson are my recommendations, and I love them. And then Malcolm Gladwell. I'm binging his books. I know we were talking about that earlier. So he's obviously great. And then on the fiction side, I have Sarah J. Maas, who's a fantasy author, and she actually opened me up to adult fantasy. Olive Blake, Haruki Murakami is a Japanese translated author who is absolutely incredible. Fredrik Backman is a Swedish translated author, also the same. I would recommend his books to you over and over again. And then Ocean Vuong, who is a poet and novelist at the same time. So those are the ones I have to mention because they're all so extraordinary, and I've been able to experience their works over and over again. And from there, I can recommend people books or yourself books based off of what you like.
Yeah. I have to remember those authors because I'm in my nonfiction phase right now, but I feel like it's too much nonfiction that I want to escape into the fiction world. And that's part of the beginning of how I started to really get into books. Was a little non-traditional. It was actually the very first book that really got my attention. Was an autobiography called, and this is it's a bit of a heavy topic, but the title of the book is First They Killed My Father, which was about a true story about a woman that as a child they were escaping the Pol Pot regime in Cambodia, and talked about the entire experience of her family. Her father was an educator, so he was targeted. And it was just such it really impacted me the way that she told the story. Ironically, now it's produced into a movie on Netflix. I don't know how many years, 20 plus years later after the book came out. But I remember reading that book and just sobbing, reading and also appreciaing the writing. So since then, I took this hard pivot into fiction, and Jessica Hagedorn and Octavia Butler, I'd say were my other authors I started to really like. And then as I'm trying to think the next couple of books that I went into were maybe a little bit more societal or historical or cultural. Some books that come to mind are The New Jim Crow, that talks about prison industrial complex, mass incarceration. So I learned a lot from that book. And then Bell Hooks, all of her books, which a lot is on race, gender, and class. So I started and then slowly started getting into then back to the, Hunger Games, getting a little lighter. And moving into that. And it helped me really appreciate all the different genres. And now in my nonfiction phase as well. I love Malcolm Gladwell. Those, I feel with his books, you can binge them so easily because they're so fascinating. And his style of writing is very easy to read as well. So I'd love to read his new book. We just talked about Talking to Strangers. Have you read that book yet?
I haven't, but I do have it. So it's on my list.
Also on my unread bookshelf. Or entire bookcase. Exactly. So that's it. It was great to kind of go through what we're of reading and really appreciating the books as well. So what books are you currently reading? And then what would you suggest for anyone who, is interested in, any, I guess, let's make it open-ended. What books would you recommend for 2024?
Okay. Yes. So, what I'm currently reading 4 different books. I'm audiobooking Never Split the Difference, which is about negotiation and persuasion by Chris Voss. I'm barely cracked into it, but it's already very, very interesting to me.
I have that on my unread bookshelf. So, let me know what you think.
So far, really good. But again, I'm on a little bit into chapter 1. But I like his writing style, which is very helpful.
Perfect.
I'm reading the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series by the same author I mentioned earlier, Sarah J. Maas. It's called Queen of Shadows, the book that I'm on. It's an 8-book series, I believe. So I'm almost towards the end, but it's it's a big deal. So
wow, 8 books.
The last book is almost 1,000 pages.
Whoa.
So I'm excited.
That is a big deal.
And then I'm reading, or I'm going to be reading on my Kindle, Flawless, which is a cowboy romance series.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I didn't crack into it yet, but I have it queued up. And then I'm actually reading the Elon Musk biography.
Oh.
And I think like I'm maybe like a third or a fourth of the way in, and I feel like it's going to be a 5-star read for me.
Wow.
I think the writing, Walter Isaacson, I believe is the author's name, is impeccable. Like just so
Really?
well written. The storytelling is insane. And learning about someone like Elon Musk and his journey and his story, and you know, he was able to give a lot and comment with the author, or give a lot to the author.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing his take on things and his side of things, and it's so incredible.
Wow.
I would recommend it to everybody. And
Okay.
I'm not done yet,
I'll
but
add that. Wow.
yeah.
Interesting.
So those are the 4. Oh, and then the books that I would recommend, and I will say like what type of people I would recommend them for.
Before you go into that, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm going to do a follow-up question.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that's actually really fun to know that your reading style is you can read multiple books at the same time.
It wasn't always like that.
So how did you turn to like one book to like multiple books at a time?
I think because of the different styles that I can take them in now. So like audiobook has made it like way easier for me. I have longer commute times, so now I have more time to fill. So the 2 audiobooks, and I can go back and forth depending on the mood, because one is biography, one is like nonfiction, self-development.
Yeah.
And then for the fiction side, I have one on my Kindle and one on my hard copy. So it's also mood-based.
Yeah.
Although I think I would probably finish my hard copy Queen of Shadows before I even really crack into the Chestnut Springs series.
Yeah.
So it's all mood, but I'm given all these
Mood-based.
options now, so I can like just go back and forth. I will say I can only really read one fiction book at a time, because you're like putting yourself in a fictional world. You don't want to get things mixed up, but yeah,
that totally makes sense. I can see where you can juggle multiple nonfiction at the same time, but that you'd want to stay in the same fantasy world, or stay in the same post-apocalyptic world, whatever book theme it is. But you're right too. You have the audiobook, you have the Kindle, and then you have the actual hard copy. I'm still stubborn, and I'm sticking with all hard copies just because I like the physical piece. But you can also get through more books if you do audio.
For sure. It's life-changing, honestly.
Yeah.
It helps me so much.
You're right, especially with commutes and stuff. But I guess for me, it'd be more podcasts that I listen to, but maybe I'll be more open to the audio.
Well, and not to like plug or anything, but Spotify Premium offers free audiobooks.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I'm shouting it from the rooftops because it's so incredible. I finished like 4 audiobooks in the past like 2.5 months because of that offering. It's just mind-blowing that they are offering that. To me, it's mind-blowing because I would have to pay Audible and like, go through that process and have 1 book a month, and now I'm like, I'm finishing all of them. Oh my god, it's amazing.
I did not know that. Thank you for letting me know.
So it's free to try out, right? Like if you don't like it, or if you end up not liking it, you're no harm, no foul.
I feel like for the like any kind of personal or professional development books, audio would be great versus the fiction I want to have. But I guess it just depends on the person as well.
Some people can do fantasy and audio.
That's true.
I can't do that.
Because I guess it depends who the narrator is.
That's true. Yeah. Fun fact, I can't listen to British narrators because I can't understand them well enough to like multitask to drive and like anyway.
It's funny. Now I gotta try it with someone that's just to see if I like it or not.
All the accents.
I love that. So let's move on, I guess, to the book recommendations that you have for.
Okay. So the first one is one I finished recently, and I would highly recommend it to yourself, like and any woman ever, is Lessons in Chemistry. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I have heard of it, and I don't think I have it.
Okay.
So,
well, I would heavily, it's like a definite 5-star for me, maybe even 6-star. I cried. I got angry. It was a journey of this chemist woman in the 1950s, and kind of the experience that and journey that she had to go through as a woman in the 1950s, trying to have that type of profession and certain things in her life. It's a fiction story, but it was just it was incredible. I was
Okay.
like so moved.
Really?
It was insane. Yeah.
I love those
So
types
good.
of books when, you know,
Yeah.
from like cover to cover. So
Yeah.
on my list, Lessons
Okay.
in Chemistry.
Yes, Lessons in Chemistry. And they just made it into a TV show.
Oh.
And I'm forgetting the actress's name, but I'm looking forward to watching it and
Okay.
seeing if it's as good as the book.
Yeah. But for
okay.
everyone, know that the book is always better than
Yes.
what's on TV or the movie. So read the book
The
first.
only exception to that rule I have ever witnessed is Normal People. If you've ever heard of that, it's
I have not.
television series from, and the book is also Normal People by Sally Rooney. They did so
Really?
good. They did
Okay.
so good. Like,
I'm impressed then, because usually it's the book's better.
It's a rule of life that the book is always better.
Yes.
Normal People, I would fight for that one.
Okay.
The TV series.
I'll look into that
crazy.
too.
Okay. Yeah, you're gonna come away with like a list of like all the books you have to read. That'll take you probably a year because there's so many. But my favorite book of 2023 that I have to mention as well is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake.
I love that title.
Right? And the cover, if you see it, it's gorgeous, and that kind of drew me in as well. I would just say it's kind of a character study of two people who seem to be kind of different than the rest and their individual journeys. I wouldn't go too deep into it because I want everyone to experience it their own way. And it's also not actually everybody likes it, but it impacted me heavily.
Really?
Yes.
How did it impact you?
I thought I connected with the feeling of finding someone who you believe to be so unique and them believing that you are also unique. I don't like believing someone is special and believing that you're special, but also maybe not everyone understanding. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. I just think that the character study aspect of it and these in-depth into the lives of these unique characters, it just impacted me. I thought the writing was insane. It was so gorgeous. So I was crying just because of the writing style.
Yeah.
And not even anything in the book.
Oh.
I just thought it was so beautiful.
I love that. It sounds like it's two people recognizing and seeing each other for who they are wholly and authentically.
Yes. You're better at this.
That's good. No, and that's like something I feel like everybody, wants too, is to be seen and understood in their truth, who they are, and being accepted for it.
Exactly. So it resonated. I feel like, exactly what you said.
I love that. Well, we'll check that out. What's the name of that book again?
Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. And then the last one I want to mention, because this is a nonfiction, and I know you're in your nonfiction era, is the 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think by Brianna Wiest. Have you heard of that
yes.
one?
I follow her on Instagram.
Yeah.
She's amazing. I want to support her as an author, so I'm so glad that you brought it up as a book recommendation. What is that book about?
So it's 101 essays, all with like various topics, but I read it like right in the start of my 20s, like probably when I turned 20 or something. And it was such a transitional period of my life. So all of the advice that she gives was extremely helpful. And I want to reread it like maybe every year, because I think every year you're a completely different person.
Yes.
Or, things have changed. Yeah. So you want to take in the information with who you are at that time. And I think it's really digestible because it's split into different essays. So you can like feel accomplished with the reading after you just finish one, right? And then you like work through each one. And if you think about it, you get one essay per day. There's only 101. You'll finish the book definitely in like 3 months or something. Yeah, so fast. So I think that her A, style of writing, and B, the messages, I completely agree with everything that she has to say. So that was helpful. Like we have the same value system and belief system. But it's a great reference book for me as well to like go back and be like, oh yes, okay.
I love that. Yeah, I follow her on Instagram, and what she posts there are like snippets from her different books. I think one is like The Mountain Is You or something like that. But I really resonate with her messages and her like tone of writing. I don't know if I'm like even describing it correctly because I'm not like an author or something.
No. Yeah.
But I really resonate a lot with, I don't know if it's this book or Mountain Is You, around like transitions, which is similar to what you may be referring to as well, and how she really helps you reframe things. And it like hits home. It hits like inside. So adding that to the cart as well.
I do feel like, are you familiar with The Subtle Art of Not Giving?
Yes.
I feel like it's the more feminine version of that style where it's like, listen, this is how things are. But right, because that's kind of his style of writing is very blunt and straightforward. But hers is a little bit more feminine and like gentle. Yeah. So I feel like that is a huge part of why it was like nice, because I like straightforward, but maybe don't like punch me for it.
Yeah.
Okay. It was really good though. I definitely top one. Yeah.
And I like the essay format too, and the way that you like the perception of it is you feel like you're making progress because it's like one essay at a time. Yeah. So it's easy read.
Yes.
So I remember her posting saying she was going to be doing a book signing in my favorite bookstore in New York City, Strand Bookstore. And I was like, oh, I wish that I was there. And I totally would have stood in that really long line just to meet her and like have like a book signed by her. But maybe we can get her out here to Oahu.
I would be so happy. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That'd be great.
I'll pay for her flight.
Right. Yeah. And like read to us. Can we just like have like a reading? That's great. Well, thanks for sharing the recommendations. I'd like to talk about the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It has been on my unread shelf for a while, and it was always a target for me. I keep hearing so many great things about the book, how well it was laid out and written, best-selling. I don't know, millions of copies around the world. So finally read it. Yay! And obviously you've read it too.
Yes.
And I've never done like a book review. So I don't know if this would be considered a book review, but rather us talking about what we liked about the book and what came out of it. Because there was a lot of great quotes in there that from James Clear. But maybe I'll start.
Please.
One of like, I guess the first thing, and that's towards the beginning of the book, where he talks about, I guess the subtitle is Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. So really it's like, it's more about showing up every day. Like that 1% improvement every day. Tiny changes consistently leads to long-term sustainable transformation, which that really resonated with me because that's what I do in Dharma coaching and consulting and, you know, in my studies and practices of Ayurveda. It's about showing up, self-responsibility, consistency, even if it's imperfect and even if it's like small changes. And so everything that was outlined in this book, his entire method, really resonated with me because I've really tried to get back into showing up consistently and having good habits. So yeah, that was sort of like the first thing that came to mind. And then the other thing, which we had talked about this prior to recording, is the environment piece. Yeah. And the way I read it is, in order to create a good habit, make it obvious and prime the environment for future use. And so how does that kind of like come up for you? How does that show up in your life?
Yeah. So I think the make it obvious and priming your environment is, again, with the Oak Pine Society of surrounding yourself with entrepreneurs who are so motivated, and kind of the rule that people know of like the people that are closest to you are going to be very impactful on your life. Yes. So who you surround yourself with is super important. So even though this isn't necessarily like a habit, it's the same for me as like making it obvious and creating that environment where if you're surrounded by people that are encouraging you to like dream big and that you're capable, then the habit is going to be dreaming big and feeling capable and like taking actions based off of that. So that's my like touchy-feely kind of takeaway. On the more practical side of like I need to work out or something, he makes it like it's a clear-cut map, right? Like if you
Mhm.
want to work out more, what are your stuck points? So mine has been like just not even remembering to go. So then I time block, and then I have I schedule my appointments for Pilates like in advance. So it's obvious, like it's right there on my calendar. I'm going to go. My environment is my calendar essentially. And that's what's worked for me. But yeah, how about you? How do you?
Yeah. I felt like before I read the book, I realized I was already somewhat doing some of these. So the first thing that came to mind was I have this ritual at night where I set up, and this is me integrating Ayurvedic practices on a daily basis. I set up my tea and herbs on the counter. I soak herbs overnight. And then I have a small pan that I put on the stove that I do like a gentle heating for oil when it's this ritual called Abhyanga in Ayurveda where you do like self massage oil every night. And I set it up every evening around the same time so that when I wake up, it's there. It's already primed. I make it obvious. I make it easy. And then same with the evening as well. And then as part of it too, he talks about the habits scorecard, which is like, how can you create either like, I guess they call it the pointing and calling. And I don't know if you remember in the book, but he uses like the New York City subway, which to me, again, because I lived in New York City for so long, I remember them like every time it's a stop, they'll stop, they'll point to the clock, call it, clear the subway platform, and then they close the doors. And just the very obvious things of pointing, calling, gets you, it becomes a habit. And I noticed, not for me, but for my partner, he's studying to get his master's now. He doesn't know he's doing this, but he does it every day. He'll point and call, tell me exactly what he's doing that evening for his studies. And I think he doesn't realize when he does that, it creates that habit and it makes him accountable that he's going to do that and deliver it that evening. And then does it again the next day, points, calls, says exactly. And it creates that habit over time. So
I'm going to try that.
Like this is what I'm going to do. And it's like you're almost reporting it to someone as like an accountability.
Absolutely.
And then you do it.
I like that idea. In the style that he did it, right? Like that's really cool.
And he doesn't even know he's doing it. But when I was reading this book, I was like, he totally is doing the pointing and calling every day when it comes to his studies.
That's awesome.
And so I think another thing that came up, I think in chapter 11, experiment with the quantity versus quality group. So, or I guess they did that experiment of, I forgot what they were working on. Oh, I think it was like an art class. And the instructor had asked one group to say, this is what I want you to do. The deliverable is going to be the same. And it's a certain type of artwork. So one group work on it every day and turn the final product at the end. The other group, and so it's about quantity. So keep pushing it out. The second group, you only deliver one, and it's about quality. So which group do you think did better?
The quality?
Ended up being the quantity.
But
I think everyone would think it would be the quality group because you're focused on the quality. And, you're spending all this time coming up with like, this is how it's going to look like and trying to come up with like exactly how to look like. But it's the quantity group that ended up like by far and away did a way better job than the quality group because they kept showing up every day, pushing something out, learning what they did wrong, refining it,
I love that.
Getting it better every day. So it goes back to that 1% improvement and just showing up consistently, even though it's imperfect. And so same time frame, the quantity group ended up pushing out a way better product.
That is so, because I mean, you kind of just hear the phrase quality over quantity. Like that's something people say. And it's kind of ingrained. So the way that you explained it was flawless, by the way. And just an incredible like change of mindset,
it kind of reminds me, because this is like my block on social media.
Yeah.
Is
That's true.
showing up on social media, even though it's imperfect. But the more you kind of show up and it's more consistent, no matter what it looks like over time, the quantity is going to come up with better results. So that's sort of how I thought about it.
That's a perfect application. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it should be like about quantity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was an interesting point.
Absolutely.
Oh, immediate versus delayed rewards. Basically, he says, the cost of your good habits are in the present. The cost of your bad habits are in the future. And I immediately thought about my diet and the food that I eat. Because I'm trying to eat healthier. But I love all types of food. I love all types of spices. I am not discriminatory when it comes to it. That's probably the one part of my life that I'm not like extremely healthy on, and I'm trying to get better. So I remind myself of that, like the costs of good habits are in the present. But if you constantly do something that you know is not great for your body or whatever, the cost of it's going to be in the future.
Yeah. And what got me with that specific idea is honestly my like desire to be a mom in the future. And so I need to take care of my body. So even if for like some reason I'm not feeling motivated just by caring for myself, and I'm like, well, I'll just eat a brownie. If it affects me 10 years from now, then whatever. But it's like, it'll also affect hopefully the future child or children that I'll have. And that's way more impactful for me. And I found that to be impactful for some of my friends as well. Right? If you think about how your body affects other people essentially as well. So that's been a huge motivator for me in like future consequences of your current actions. Yeah. So that really resonated. Same thing with the diet, right? Like diet is just a huge thing. So
And I feel like with this, like when it comes down to habits, is like basically saying it may be painful to show up every time to do your habit. But over time, it's going to give you those compound gains, I guess is like the term they used. Did I have
like
that?
With social media.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Even if it's painful to go through it every single day and produce your quantity, and then you'll see the compound effect of all these people looking at your profile and seeing that you're showing up.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like too, when I brought up the compound gains, he brings up like how do you recover? Like the recovery, how can you recover quickly when you do break your habits? And this is like really for anything, even obviously outside of Atomic Habits, but like showing up even if you have a bad day. Or, if you're having a string of bad days, or, when you're doing your habit and it's not coming out the way you want, you are still showing up, because if you stop, then you're losing all the compounding gains that you've created by showing up consistently before. So it's there's a sacrifice in there with being in the present and showing up. And then let's see, I think there was other ones. Oh, how to create and stick to good habits. So we learn in the book, we learn like his framework, but I started kind of thinking, well, what's kind of like the meat to it in terms of, well, how do you just create and stick to it? We talked about accountability partner, having some kind of habit contract or habit tracker. But I think it was interesting he used, I'll just say the quote in the book, the areas where you are genetically predisposed to success are the areas where habits are more likely to be satisfying. So the key is to direct your effort toward areas that both excite you and match your natural skills to align your ambition with your ability. So this is actually where I feel like I misaligned with, I'm not a big social media person. I'm not like I'm not someone, ironically, we're in front of a camera now, but I'm not like someone who typically likes to be like the performer or be on stage. That's definitely my north node in astrology. It doesn't come to me naturally. So I think that's why it's hard for me when I think about, I want to do all the social media stuff so I can show up more. But it doesn't come to me naturally. So what does, and how can I stick to that habit.
Yeah.
But how does that kind of come up for you? Because it seems like for you, like, I know we're talking about books and reading, but does it come up for you in any other way?
I think in that exact example, right, I think I'm primed for reading.
Yeah.
So I've turned it into a part of my profession now where I have to read so I can recommend good things and talk about books. So that makes sense. And then things outside of like my natural capabilities might be ironically like having conversations.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've been able to tell, but I'm not the best at explaining books or explaining and reviewing books because I get sucked in and I forget. Like I get put in the world so much that I forget what I'm like retaining. And then later on, I just remember the feeling. So I'm working on that. And on the plus side, just the energy around books. That's my natural gift and path, maybe, if that makes sense. But my natural gift is like having to explain them afterwards. So.
Well, it's interesting because you have like a habit around reading the books.
Yes.
Like that is the power right there.
Yeah.
That's your naturalness. But I like what you mentioned, that it's not the entire energy around book reading. Like, I don't know if you're considering being an author one day, but maybe if it doesn't come natural to you, then maybe it's not that. And you've really created like this area, and then you've shown up. And I think I saw that you read like 52 books or something crazy like that last year. So that's clearly like something that is in like your wheelhouse as well. So, and then this kind of goes along with it, but there's this another quote on there says, you don't have to build the habits everyone tells you to build. Choose a habit that best suits you, not the one that is most popular. But I know like there's like two different sides to the story with that, because sometimes it's, if it leads to something greater, then how do you build the habit for it?
I think now in thinking about this, sales is not my like natural path. I don't like selling and being salesy, and people say when you have a business you need to sell it. You need to be salesy, you need to learn sales and sales tactics. And I'm just pretty averse to it because I'm like, no, but we're friends. So like, I want to give this to you, or I want you to want it on your own. I don't want to have to persuade you or convince you, which is funny because now I'm reading Never Split the Difference, which is all about like persuasion. But and that's just to help with general communication skills, I think. But I feel like people say that all the time, like you have to learn sales. And I'm like, I think there's truth to it, but that's mine.
I think if you have your own thing going, that if anything, that might be the most important thing is sales before even marketing. I mean, sales is part of marketing. But and I remember, I had submitted a question to this Sparked podcast. It's a podcast I listen to. I refer to the host a lot, Jonathan Fields. He has another podcast, The Good Life Project. But and I talk about this a couple episodes ago in terms of finding your gifts through modern assessments, and the Sparketype assessment was one of them. And in the Sparketype assessment, my anti-Sparketype, which is your type that is takes the most energy and drains you, and it's like the one you don't want to do, so you try to minimize it as much as possible. For me, it was the performer. And there's some entertainment aspect to it, but it's also like being able to really add some liveliness to what you do, and like being the person on the stage. Again, like that's my North Node in astrology. But in their response, him and then there's an executive coach that responded, said, if you're doing something that requires that, then you will need to do it for a little bit until you're ready to let it go or minimize it, and then like put your energy into some way. And that's where I think Atomic Habits can help, because you need to do something and you have to establish it in your like daily routine and things like that. I will
say, from what you're saying about like the performer and the entertainer, is like knowing you in person, I feel like you're very consistent. Like it never feels like you're putting on a performance. And so maybe that's why you're able to do all the things that you do, because I feel like you're very authentic. And I don't mean to take this like side tangent, but I'm always very comfortable talking with you. And I feel like that maybe that can make it easier if you view it from that perspective. Like you've always been very authentic and genuine, whether you're in front of the camera or not. So I feel like there's no performance, you know, you're just being yourself.
Yeah, maybe I'm glad that you brought that up. Thanks for that perspective, because I do think of it that way when I think about, okay, you need to step up, you know, perform in this way or be on stage for this. To me, I'm like, can I just be myself?
Right.
Why do I have to like put on a face to perform? And that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So yeah, thank you for that. That reflection.
Hopefully that helps, because I think you're very consistent in who you are, both like right now in front of a camera, but also just when we're hanging out outside. You know? So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That makes me feel a lot better with understanding where I am on the performer North Node scale. Was there anything else about the book that you think that's worth chatting about?
Okay, so this, because it's just like the easiest to connect back to reading, is the identity aspect.
Yes.
So it's on page 39 here, but I highlighted one. It's a simple 2-step process. 1, decide the type of person you want to be. And 2, prove it to yourself with small wins. And on the page opposing on 38, it's like each time you write, you're a writer. Each time you practice the violin, you're a musician. So it's just talking about like habits that align with an identity. And I think he used as an example, or maybe I made this up, but like, if you want to read, it's not I want to read, it's I am a reader.
Yes.
Right? And like having those kind of solid affirmations of your identity to shift you into creating those habits more easily. Yes. I really like that. And I feel like that's going to be my new tip for how to read. It's like, you are a reader. And I had this conversation last night at my BookHouse event, but I was saying I want to bring book lovers together, even if you read one book a year, but you just really enjoy it, right? Or you really enjoy the presence of people that love books and you like talking about it and learning about it, but you just read one a year. Maybe you don't have time, whatever it is. Yeah. But you're a reader, and you can say that, like, I am a reader. And if you want to get into reading, you say, I am a reader. If you want to get into working out, you're like, I'm a person that works out. I'm a person that does this, right? Yeah. So I really enjoyed that my second time around reading the book, because I feel like that also helps with like imposter syndrome. Yes. To say those kind of affirmation things, and like with social media, like I am present on social media. Yes. Right? I feel like it's very helpful and very encouraging and motivating. So,
and I like, it's funny because I highlighted the same thing on that page. So I like how James Clear, the author, also follows up in the following paragraph. He says, ask yourself, who is the type of person that could get the outcome I want? So it's just, you're thinking about, with identity, you're like, this is what I want to evolve into. This is who I want to become. And then you become that type of person. And that's where I am a reader. Right. I am a podcaster. Yeah. You know, I am a business owner. Yeah. And then you become it, and you create the small habits to become what you want. So yes, I love that. I think that's a great way to kind of circle the conversation, because we started off with the conversation with you talking about priming your environment and being around certain types of people that helped encourage you and create habits, and also helped you create this new identity of someone that doesn't just, you know, facilitates and operates events for a society, but you are also an entrepreneur in your own right as well. So where can people connect with you? Where can people, those that are based on Oahu, visit you and your bookstore? Yeah. Well, the number one place is going to be my Instagram. I'm super active on there, very responsive, and it's BookHouse High, so BookHouse HI. And as for if you're on island, currently I'm in Hawaii Kai, located inside of Gather. But my plan for 2024 is to be able to do pop-ups around the island. So like Kailua, North Shore, Central Milani area, town. And all of that information gets posted on my Instagram. Yeah. So that's just like the best place to refer to everything. Same thing with my events. So pop-ups would be like just book sales, but I have events and I'm trying to do them kind of all throughout the island. That's also on my Instagram. It's also my website, which is bookhousehawaii.com. And then
on my Eventbrite page. So that's where all
Awesome.
of the events are and where you can like get tickets and stuff.
So many. I look forward to attending a lot of them going forward.
Yay.
Also, I wanted to clarify, it's a thrift bookstore. So if anyone wants to donate books,
Yes.
to hit you up as well. I've donated a
Yeah.
couple, and it's so fun to see them on the shelves.
Yeah, no, donating has been a huge, huge help because I get obviously donated books in that I can read through. I will say all of my books are curated. So I research them all before putting them on the shelf, and that goes for the donated ones as well. Anything that doesn't get put on the shelf, I donate to a Red Cross right now, unless
That's
someone
great.
else ever needs it. And then the other thing I'll stipulate is like with the people that come back, those are the people that give like the best books.
Yeah.
So people like yourself, that I'm trying to generate this community, and I feel like everyone in the community are donating books that even I want to take home and like I want to keep. So thank you for your donations, and thank you to everyone who's donated, because there are just so many good books from people like yourself who are passionate about reading. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I just go on a random tangent?
Yeah, no, that's great. I wanted to make sure to highlight that because it's also, if you're wanting to support small businesses and owners, and also wanting to save a couple bucks, your store is a great place to find, great books. And it's not just adult, there's kids and children's books as well.
Yeah, I have everything from like board books, toddlers, to middle school, high school, adult, nonfiction.
I love it.
Everything.
I love the young adult fiction.
Yeah.
Give me all the post-apocalyptic stories.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's so nice having you on the podcast,
thank
Sammie.
You, Casey. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as I had participating in it. Seeing Sammie with her passion around books and encouraging others to read over the last year or so really inspired me and got me excited about reading again. When it comes to reading, as Sammie mentioned, it can serve you in many different ways. One, it can be a form of escape in a good way, where you can really get lost in another world and appreciate the characters and how the story develops. You can also, from a practical standpoint, gain so much knowledge from well-written, nonfiction books that can quite literally change your life. This is because a book can outline very clearly and with enough detail, a framework, a system, or approach that you can implement in your life or career today. I have so much respect for authors. The time and effort it takes to outline, write, edit, publish, and market a book is no easy feat. As a book reader, thank you to all the authors for gifting us with your wisdom, your creativity, and your vulnerability. Without authors, we would not have these fantasy worlds we can escape to and the accessible knowledge for us to soak in. And so I will leave you with this final quote from best-selling book Atomic Habits by James Clear. The secret to getting results that last is to never stop making improvements. It's remarkable what you can build if you just don't stop. It's remarkable the business you can build if you don't stop working. It's remarkable the body you can build if you don't stop training. It's remarkable the knowledge you can build if you don't stop learning. It's remarkable the fortune you can build if you don't stop saving. It's remarkable the friendships you can build if you don't stop caring. Small habits don't add up. They compound. That's the power of atomic habits. Tiny changes, remarkable results. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If there's anything that resonated with you, please share it on Instagram and tag me at CaseyCan_ and at HelloFlow Collective. I would love to hear from you. As always, if you enjoy listening to what we discuss on the podcast, please share the show with friends who may also resonate. And don't forget to also subscribe, rate, and review. See you next time on the HelloFlow podcast.